Welcome to the Planet Trillion Trees podcast. I'm Eva Monheim.
And I'm Hal Rosner. We are both certified arborists through the International Society of Arboriculture. The purpose of our podcast is to encourage tree planting and proper tree care for our urban forests, which include neighborhoods, parks, and other open spaces.
We will also cover a myriad of tree topics, including the important role trees play in relationship to the climate crisis. Thank you for joining us. The Planet Trillion Trees podcast is happy to announce that we have won 2 Garden Communicator International Silver Laurel Medal Awards for Best Podcast and Best Podcast Episode. We've also won a Garden Communicators International Gold Laurel Medal Award for a Best Podcast Episode. We'd like to thank Garden Communicators for their recognition.
Verdant Earth Educators provides dynamic in-person training and online learning opportunities for environmental and horticultural businesses. Owned by ISA-certified arborists and former university faculty, the Verdant Earth Educator team provides consultations on tree care and recommends climate-resilient opportunities for your valued green spaces. Verdant Earth Educators is all about seeding knowledge for success. Find Verdant Earth Educators at verdanteartheducators.com.
Monheim Microphones designs and handcrafts top-tier studio microphones and preamps right here in the United States in Hollywood, California. Their incredible line of innovative microphones and designs are used around the world by everyone from podcasters to top-charting record producers and singers. Monheim Microphones' unparalleled excellence. MonheimMicrophones.com. This podcast is being recorded on June 28th, 2024. Jessica Turner-Skoff is Longwood Gardens' first Associate Director of Science Communications. She champions Longwood's leadership in plant science and interprets Longwood's scientific resources for multiple communications channels and audiences. Jessica is an internationally recognized award-winning science communicator who is professionally trained as a conservation biologist. She came to Longwood after making significant contributions in science communications at the Morton Arboretum, serving as a Botany in Action Fellow for 3 years at Phipps Conservatory, and teaching science communication at collegiate and professional levels. Jessica holds a Ph.D. in biology from West Virginia University, an MS in conservation science and sustainable development from University of Maryland College Park, and a BS from Muskingum University. She is an editorial advisor of the journal Plants, People, Planet, and she was the 2020 Emerging Horticultural Professional from the American Horticultural Society, as well as a Chanticleer Scholar in 2022. Welcome to the Planet Trillion Trees podcast, Jessica. We're delighted that you could be with us today.
Thank you so much. I mean, looking at your guest list, I feel like I've made it now. It's very illustrious.
You made it a while ago, trust me. With your background, we're excited that you're on our podcast today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and a lot of times, Jessica, the feedback we get from listeners, particularly the younger demographic, is that the interview they heard helped them map out their own career path. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us about your career path. We're always interested in where you grew up and what kind of experiences you may or may not have had with nature.
Absolutely. I grew up from a position of privilege when it comes to plants. My parents very much were huge advocates for nature. I think I was almost forced to be a scientist with the fact that my mom and dad would get me field guides for every gift-giving holiday or a microscope. I really was heavily influenced by them, but just being outside was what we did. And I loved being around plants. I thought it was amazing, not only the beauty that they could provide, but the ways that they interact with the human culture and life. So I always joke, like I should have known I was going to be working at gardens much sooner than I did. My senior skip day was to Dawes Arboretum. At prom, I went to the Franklin Park Conservatory, and that I spent a lot of time looking at the plants instead of dancing. So I just always loved, being in nature. I took care of people's gardens as a side job, but it wasn't until actually much later in my life that I realized it was plants for me. I thought I was going to work with animals. I tried that. Then I ended up actually going and again, wanting to understand that connection between plants and people and conservation. I went and got my doctorate, which was looking at American ginseng and how the root of sustainability, investigating the relationship between medicinal plant conservation and surface mining in Appalachia. And then it was during that time, for the 3 years I received the Phipps Competitive Botany in Action Fellowship, which was all about science communication. And it really merged my love of talking about plants, talking about being outside, my theater kid days with science. So it was like all my loves came together in one. And from there, I worked at the Morton Arboretum for almost 8 years, which was a fantastic experience outside of Chicago, Illinois. And about 7 or so months ago, I started at Longwood Gardens as their Associate Director of Science Communications.
That's wonderful.
And so Dawes Arboretum, if I'm remembering correctly, is that Cleveland area?
That is in Ohio, central Ohio area. So
okay, so you hail from Ohio.
Yes, I am from the heart of it all, but have definitely moved around a bunch in the tri-state area or multi-state area.
Very cool. Public gardens, we're learning, and I'm going to talk a minute about a very good YouTube video that you have up on the internet. But public gardens play such a critical role in connecting plants with people and the educational experiences that can be so life-changing. So you have a new job as Associate Director of Science Communications. Do you have a basic philosophy on how you're going to promote that paradigm, that concept, and not keep it too abstract?
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to be able to share a little bit of a story, but
yes.
As a scientist, I will have to say I want to cite my sources first and foremost. There's a lot of great resources out there. Westwood et al. 2020, Cavender and Donnelly 2019, my own paper, Turner-Skoff and Cavender 2019. So just want to get that right out of the way.
Thank you.
Then before I jump into the story, the thing that I love about public gardens is there is such an emphasis on plants. I mean, they're incredible life forms that we need to be promoting them. Like if I went out in the street and I asked a random person what the largest organism is, they'd probably say like a male blue whale. But it's in fact Pando, a quaking aspen that's over 106 acres. The tallest living thing is Hyperion, coastal redwood, that's 1/4 times taller than the Statue of Liberty. The oldest, Methuselah, 4,700 years old. This tree, this bristlecone pine, was already hundreds of years old when the pyramids of Giza were built. So we have all these incredible life forms, but they also provide life for us. They're the baseline of the food chain. They're the primary producers. They produce oxygen. They produce energy that fuels all other life. They clean our air. They clean our water. They keep soil in place. They're part of nutrient cycles. And every component of our lives, medicinal, cultural, well-being, we owe to plants. But how often do we take that step back and go, wow, my life is so much better because of the plants that are in it? And that's what I love about gardens, is it's that interface where people are coming to be around plants, to enjoy them and to embrace them. And there's a lot of threats right now to plants. There's habitat loss, there's climate change, there's natural disasters. But the main issue that we see with all of those is the concern that we have that we're losing biodiversity. And we're losing a ton of plant biodiversity, which again, it's essential for all other life. Westwood talks about how there's over 80,000 different plant species that are threatened with extinction. And that's more than all of the described birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and fishes combined. That is a tremendous amount of life that needs our help. And gardens are such a great place to help be champions for biodiversity. First of all, it's that public interface. It's over 3,000 gardens and over 500 million visitors a year. They have expertise they're working on. They have the specialized facilities. There's living collections. And, we can't just wait around for other groups to do it. I know, like the Endangered Species Act, only 2% of the funding goes towards plants. Whereas botanic gardens, display gardens, there's a huge emphasis on plants. So we are the natural advocates. And that's one of the things that's so fun about my job is I just get to talk about plants and all the amazing things that we do and the great work that is happening to keep them safe.
Have you heard about the white buffalo that was born just
Yeah.
recently? Okay.
So exciting.
It's very exciting. And do you know, they were talking about it, and I think they mentioned that it was a wonderful sign for the native population. But it also is very ominous too. And the ominous part of that is the degradation of our earth. It will come when our earth is being degraded. And when it arrives, we will be at a precipice. And I listened to this and I was like, oh my gosh, it's giving me chills, because we are there. We are at that crossroads of how we manage our land and our plants and our animals. What's going to happen? It could be the next great extinction. And you're saying exactly, although it's more religious for the native population, the closest people to the earth, our native population, just reinforces everything that you're saying.
Everything is connected for sure. There is a lot of things to be worried about and concerned about. But I also, on the other side of that coin, think there are so many things that we can be hopeful about. And just having all sorts of passionate people coming together to help protect life and living things. Yes, even though that I think there's a lot of issues right now, I also feel very, very hopeful.
That's a nice spin on that. And I think we have to have hope in order to keep us moving forward. One of the things that I was looking at the other day is a graphic of all the things that trees do for us. And I commented, it was on LinkedIn, and I commented on it. I said, but we don't know all the other things that trees do for us.
Absolutely.
We haven't gotten to the tipping point of all the other things that trees do for us that we are not aware of yet.
Yes. And that's something I always, whenever I see like, oh, we're going to go to Mars and like, let's understand space. Yes, absolutely. That's great. But we also don't understand what's happening on our own planet. And also the idea of going to Mars to terraform it when we could just take care of what we have right here. That's always an interesting juxtaposition to me. But yeah, there's so much that we don't know, but there's so many people that are studying and investigating and trying to learn as well. And, that's just the scientific community. Of course, there's indigenous knowledge, which is absolutely science that is out there, and more people are paying attention to it. So there's just an incredible network of people that care about the earth and are trying to keep it safe.
I think it also galvanizes people that might not typically be together. And also having conversations between people that might never speak with one another. When you finally find your people, as you would say, when you find your people, all of a sudden you wake up and you realize that, I've come to this great group of people that I feel really comfortable with and I can talk to about the things that are concerning me. And once you can talk to somebody and get that connection, there's a whole nother level that we jump to in the science world, especially.
Absolutely. Yeah. Plant people are just really good people. There's this lovely element of sharing and the connection that it can make, going back to my dissertation on American ginseng, here's this small medicinal plant that's harvested in Appalachia. And many of the harvesters, they've never even left their county where they grew up. They're very in their place and they love it. And that's great. And they're harvesting this plant that ends up on the other side of the world in one of the largest, most profitable markets, the ginseng market. And it's just incredible that these two very diverse groups and experiences, they have something to talk about. If they got together and there was a translator, there would be able to be a connection because both love these plants. And that's just incredible. I love it.
Well, the other thing, too, is that the plant actually transcends language.
Exactly.
I think that that's the other thing that I find to be almost out of this world. I mean, that's the only way that I can think of it, is that when you meet somebody who is another plant person and they don't speak your language, you can just look at the plant and they get that you get that plant.
Yeah.
And there's almost like a hidden connection or interconnection of verbiage that doesn't have to be said because it's all being shown through whether you touch the plant or whether you're looking at it, how you're walking through it. The whole idea of that, it just is so fascinating to me. I just sometimes get to the point where I almost come to tears because that's how emotional it could be.
Mm-hmm. I had a beautiful experience the other day, actually in Longwood Gardens Conservatory, which if you haven't had a chance to come to Longwood Gardens, absolutely do so. It is the premier display garden. It's one of the great gardens of the world. It's incredible. But I was just walking through and I was looking at this palm, and this woman came up to me and she did not speak English, but she saw it. It represented something really important to her. So she talked to me about it. And she was just telling the story and using her hands and describing how important. And she just kept holding her heart. And it just was this beautiful moment of connecting over this plant. And I was appreciating for her its beauty, and she was understood and recognized that. So absolutely, Eva, I completely agree.
And when that happens when I've traveled in other countries and don't know the language, you could just see it on people's faces when you walk up to something. Or I'm an avid tree hugger.
Oh yeah.
I was at the White Bog this past Monday with my friends, and they go, "Okay, Eva, okay, we'll get a picture of you hugging the tree." It was one of these big old white Atlantic cedars, and
oh, neat.
I just have such a connection to them, and I couldn't even get my hands halfway around it. It was that big. And I was just like, they've got a picture of just my back and my hat. I said, I don't care. This is great. But that idea and the connection between the energy of humans and plants is another thing too, that we might not talk about. That energy transcends a lot of different things. Whether it's the environment, whether it's the negative energy around us, the plant could actually put in a positive energy for us. So there's all that. And you're right. When you're at Longwood Gardens, if you haven't been, you need to go, because I feel blessed every day when I'm working there with the students that there's no place else on earth I want to be. I don't think of any other place on earth when I'm there.
Yeah, it's incredible. What about you, Hal? Are you a tree hugger too?
I'm mesmerized by this conversation. So thanks for reeling me in. I was thinking, we're wrapping up our 4th season, and how our guests over the years, every one of them has served as the antidote to ecological anxiety. Whatever you're feeling, or whenever I'm feeling, flirting with hopelessness, we'll call it. And then someone comes on and speaks their truth and their passion and their focus on what they are doing in their small plot on the earth. It's affirming, that there is every likelihood that humans can get themselves out of this Anthropocene, which is in gear. There's no doubt about it. It's human generated, and it's a catastrophe that is unfolding, and we're all living through it. But everybody that listens, and then more people that'll never know about the podcast, are still going to hop on and do their thing for greening and planting and becoming more intimate with nature.
I love that. And what a gift both of you are able to give to the community and the world with being able to share those stories. So thank you so much for using your platform to do that.
Yeah, I think at the end, Eva and I have this little thing when we wrap up a interview, and then one of us will call each other, and, we're both in a happy place. That has never not happened.
Well, I hope I don't make that change today.
No, we're off and running. There's no doubt about it. We're off and running.
No, we were discussing how excited we were to have you come on, because young scientists in particular are people that we need to hear from. We want to hear your perspective. I know that sounds kind of corny, but I think that we kind of concentrate on the time continuum as a line rather than as a circle. And so being able to hear people at different parts of that circle are critical for the larger whole.
Yeah. And I think it's really an exciting time for conservation, because there are so many ways that it can be done. Of course, there's policy, there's law, which absolutely needs to happen. You have the boots on the ground, applied conservation. And, one thing that I think Longwood's really able to give to the community is the conservation horticulture component. So often that is not connected to people, that if we want to be able to conserve plants, we need to be able to know how to grow them. And, it's a lot of like botany and understanding the plants, which is great. But horticulture is so essential, and what a fun way to contribute to conservation. There's a lot of really exciting stuff happening, and I do appreciate you calling me young.
Well, I know you're younger than me.
But yeah, there's so many different people working on so many different avenues that it's just really an exciting time.
So can we drill down a little bit and find out what Longwood is doing right now? I know that they have a vast amount of property. They've acquired more property, and for a very good reason, for conservation, as you're talking about right now. Give us some ideas as to how things are unfolding with the conservation work at Longwood.
Yeah, so the Longwood Science team, I really appreciate its philosophy, because not only is it about conservation of plants and ecosystems, but there's also this element of conservation of techniques and culture as well. So it's a really holistic approach to plants and making sure that we're honoring that cultural tradition, that we are maintaining these techniques that, if we weren't doing them, they'd probably not be happening as much, or a reduction. But as far as the boots on the ground conservation, we're doing a lot with native orchids, which previously it was basically considered that you couldn't grow them. But our team, especially led by Peter Zale, which I know he was a guest on this podcast, they're doing an incredible job growing these orchids that are terrestrial native orchids. We are incorporating them into the garden so they can be displayed, so people can see them and experience them. We're planting them back into our natural areas. Longwood has about 300 acres of formal gardens and about 750 natural areas. So we're planting those plants back in their native habitat. We're stewarding the habitat to make sure it's something that those plants can thrive. With conservation, we're making sure that our living collections are robust and representing the plants that need help. For any listener that's not familiar with living collections, it's not unlike how an art museum has fine works of art. They can be organized by artist or by style. Gardens have that for plants. They serve as a genetic storage, basically, making sure that they don't go extinct. And they can be used for research, they can be used for study, and they can be used for inspiration for, landscape architects walking through. We do material circularity as well. We are really integrating all of these different components of conservation into this beautiful intersection of nature, human, and culture.
When you're talking about interwoven, I think that science for a long time has sat out like it's a separate entity by itself. It's not integrated with the daily life of the human being along with the plant communities and animals. And we really have to rethink that, because we're always interacting and crossing paths with the science work that's going on. We may not know it at the time. Like we may be in a park and not know that there's a study going on because they're looking at, what's happening when people walk on this path on a regular basis. And is it affecting the animals? Is it affecting the plants? Are the plants responding to human footstep? All of those things go through my head, but not for the general public, because we're not conditioned to understand science with our own emotions, with our love of art, with our love of other, maybe computer science. Computer science is also involved in that, but we might not even think of that.
Yeah, so I completely agree with what you're saying. If you Google image search scientist, you are going to see white lab coat, a microscope. Excuse me, I'm just getting so passionate over here. I'm misspeaking.
That's fine.
You're going to see a really sterile environment. And that's so not what science is. And what I like to bring people back to is that we all do science every single day. Science is a process of understanding the world. It is a verb. It is processing information. It's taking in observations. It's making an educated guess, experimenting, and then talking about results. One thing that in my position, I really hope to encourage in people is to embrace the science that's in their everyday life and see that connection through fields, all fields. And Yes, Longwood, we have a team of people that have been trained to use that scientific process to answer and ask really big questions. But science is absolutely for everybody, and everybody does it.
One of the things that I learned while being at Longwood is the children's programs when the children come in for the summer. And you see them, looking with magnifying glasses close up at something. And you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I get chills because it's so exciting because you can hear them like oohing and ahhing over a little microbe on the ground or a little insect that's moving that you would typically not see without a magnifying glass. And those kind of things just make me very excited because they're seeing something that's happening every day right beneath their feet, right next to them, and they're not aware of it.
Yeah. And, Longwood, we do have incredible school and youth programs. We have actually virtual field trips as well. So if you are not in Pennsylvania and you can't just come on over to Longwood, you can do a lot of really great virtual options online. But that's another thing that I love about gardens because most schools stop teaching plant-based concepts in third grade. So if we're not having like this interface of a garden with the human experience, with plants, with inspiring, with beauty, with joy, where else are people going to be getting that right now? Yes, hopefully the world will become a, garden earth, moving towards that. But in the meantime, gardens are a really amazing place to help make those connections.
Yeah. When I was preparing for this interview, Jessica, I started to do a deep dive on your YouTube video you have up called just simply The Benefits of Trees. I think it's about an hour long. It really caught my eye that you have a subsection there on cognitive development and education.
Yep.
And it made me think of a guest that we had on a few weeks ago, Neela Patel. I believe she was from Berkeley, working with students doing tiny forests and,
neat.
An inner city school. She also talked about carving into macadam asphalt to establish a tiny forest in what was previously a parking place. But yeah, it was exciting and it was new to me to a certain extent, just of, the cafeteria view. What are the kids seeing at lunchtime? Is it another basketball court or another building? Or are they lucky enough to see a naturalized plantings of conifers and native perennials and grasses and things like that? And that how it did it, in fact, improve test scores and attention abilities and things like that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So that presentation that you're mentioning, that was actually based off of a paper that I wrote, which I cited in the beginning, Turner-Skoff and Cavender in 2019.
Right.
But, Nicole and I, we were both at the Morton Arboretum at the time, which is the champion of trees. And people kept coming to us and asking for information on what they could do to give to their school board, to give to their HOA, to talk about why trees were so important. So we did a literature review. And since we're scientists, we build on the work of others. And we aligned the benefits of trees to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And what we found is that trees, the benefits that they provide, can help communities reach 15 out of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are the biggest challenges of our time. So as you're mentioning that cognitive development, there's so much research that is out there that controls for extraneous variables that shows that kids that get time in nature, they are calmer, less likely to have symptoms of attention deficit flare up. They're more likely to be thinking bigger about their future and getting better test scores. And I can speak from my own personal experience. I was living in downtown Chicago before I accepted this job. And I was very fortunate enough. We lived in an area that had trees, but my eldest kid was having a lot of behavioral issues at school. And we're, again, very privileged to be able to have this experience, but moved to pastoral Pennsylvania, and those symptoms have completely cleared up. He is like the teacher's pet right now. So anecdotally, this is, and it was like, I was talking to my husband. I'm like, I wrote the paper on this. Why didn't I realize this sooner?
Right.
Sometimes I question myself, but, and so even, going to health benefits, I actually was recently, it'll be coming out soon, but AstraZeneca interviewed me on a podcast about the health benefits of being around nature. So this is something that is recognized by the industry, the medical industry. And I really feel like we need to be thinking about trees and nature in our communities like preventative medicine. They're not just a luxury. They are essential to the human experience. It is 100% something that people need. They need to be in nature. They need to be able to look at beauty. They need to have that interface. And when they don't have that opportunity or option, their lives aren't as full and connected. And the implications are just really clear in the literature about how, if we want to set society and people up for success, they need to have nature.
So their lives are not as expansive. They're very limited when you think about not being able to be around trees and green. And I know some doctors are actually prescribing that for their patients. Go out and take a walk, or the Japanese forest bathing technique, where you go out and you have to be there and walk the pathways with the ancients and take an hour of your day to do that in order for you to have a certain demeanor about yourself, or tone down your heart rate by being in the green. There's just so many things about it. And I think, when I'm out and I get not only excited, but I also get very calm too.
Yeah.
There's a duality that happens. The excitement of seeing something new. The other day, we were picking blueberries, and my one friend, she was so funny because she went up and down the roadways and picking blueberries and eating them. And she's not one to typically eat a lot. And she ate from the time we got out of the car all the way till we got back into our cars. And she goes, "Oh, I hope you don't mind, but I really feel like I just needed more blueberries." You don't care.
Eva, how was that blueberry picking experience for you?
Oh, the blueberry picking experience. Oh my gosh. I just was not only excited, but it brought so much joy to me that I can't describe it. We're trying these little blueberries versus the big blueberries. And, Mrs. White, she had a garden there that had lots and lots of different types of blueberries there.
Oh, wow.
And you go into this back of where her house is, and it's not really kept up very well anymore, but there's tons of shrubs there. And you go from one to the next, and you feel like you're at a wine tasting, only you're tasting berries.
Yeah.
And you go from the tiny, tiny berries, and then you go to the real big berries. And so we're all kind of voting. Do you like this one? No, that one. Here's I like the tang on this one, or I like the tartness of this one, or I like the sweetness of this one. And the other thing that I noticed too is it was the interaction of the picking, the touching of the plant, the looking at the trees around the plants, the sorrel trees, how they came into next to the blueberries, and they were kind of commingling with one another. And then the big Pinus rigida, which is the pitch pine, right there next to them. And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal.
And just to clarify for our listeners, Eva was not using any psychedelic medicine, right?
No,
this
it was the
just
blueberries.
pure organic. Because I tell you what, that retelling just now, pretty good.
It was definitely the blueberries. And they had nothing in them but the regular stuff that they grow.
Yeah.
All the good antioxidants.
Exactly. And even the other women that I was with, and it was a woman's day out, and they all said the same thing. Like, we were just hugging each other at the end of the day and saying, when are we doing it next?
Yeah.
Because we need to be out and doing that, because we're all former professors and professors. And to us, it's critical for us to be out there.
I completely agree. And that's something that I hope as a society when we move forward, because, our cities are not built to have that nature integrated.
No.
And
Right.
where you have most of the people where they live, work, and play, there is an absolute disconnect because it hasn't been planned for. They're not being maintained or cared for. The nature, there's a ton of great work that is occurring. Absolutely amazing. But it's still not enough. We're not combining green and gray infrastructure appropriately. And we're not designing cities as a way that can really foster that connection with nature, which again can have such benefits for people in every area of their life. So yeah, because everyone should be able to enjoy picking blueberries like you did.
Yeah. I mean, why not? And I was thinking about too, because if there's not a botanic garden close by, or an arboretum or something like that, go to a cemetery.
Yes.
Cemeteries have wonderful trees, have a wonderful connection with nature. And I was telling someone the other day that and actually, I was speaking with someone in Greece yesterday, and I was telling her that we have this Philly Orchard project in Philadelphia where they plant in old cemeteries so that the people can benefit from the fruits that they're planting. And she says, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. That would be wonderful here because we have a lot of cemeteries. I'm sure they do in Greece, right? And it was that kind of connection that I made with her that it was just like, oh my gosh, the lights went on. We could use a cemetery for green space.
Yeah. And so one of the projects I was very lucky to be involved with at the Morton Arboretum and, Longwood, we are accredited arboretum through ArbNet.
That's right.
It is a fantastic program. Communities, cemeteries, gardens, parks. If you want to be HOAs, if you want to be an accredited arboretum, you can follow these steps and there's resources, there's all sorts of help. But there's a lot of different ways that you can find this green space in your community. You can go to ArbNet and look up arboretums that are near you. American Public Gardens Association, there's a list. And if you live in the Philadelphia area, we are the garden capital of the world. So you can actually get a little passport and go around to all of the gardens. And, and if financially there's a limitation, there's a lot of these cultural institutions that have discounted tickets or participate for like Museums for All or other sort of opportunities where, financially that should not be a barrier to you being able to get out and enjoy nature.
That's very true. And I think that you've hit on some really important components. And in our region in particular, most people can't believe the amount of gardens that we have. And a lot of them are free where you can just walk in or it's an open space area where you can walk in and not have to feel like, you have to pay. And I think that one of the things with American Public Gardens is that it's open for everybody. It's open for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I wanted to ask, I just noticed this last night. Morton Arboretum, are they doing a half step towards rebranding using that Champion of Trees?
Well, since I'm no longer with them, I'm not. Right. I know that was their brand as the Champion of Trees when I was there.
Okay. So, yeah. That's very clever. I like that because, it just kind of, I'm not saying it plays down the word arboretum, but it is, I think, a certain segment of people are going to resonate with, Champion of Trees. I saw it on the banner for the upcoming conference, the Arbor Day Foundation in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And it was just Champion of Trees. And I thought, who is this organization? Because it didn't say Morton Arboretum. And I thought, I'll have to look it up. Maybe it's a new tree company or something like that. But
I'm wondering if the whole PR package for that is the fact that Morton Arboretum is the go-to to become an arboretum. So ArbNet.
You mean, is ArbNet based out of Morton? Or?
That is, I'm not sure I could answer those questions. Yeah. But what I can say is that I think that there are a lot of words that feel really unfamiliar to people in this area, like horticulture and arboretum and everything like that. And so that PR component, I look at it as opportunities. Like there are ways that we can be like, no, an arboretum, that's a garden full of trees. And
exactly.
That's in horticulture, the art and science of growing plants. I do believe that those words matter and we need to have specific definitions and specific words, jargon, but we also can make sure that we're defining what they are to help make them more accessible and making people feel more comfortable.
Right, because to your point, in the design of our cities, and there's a couple images in your talk, Jessica, that are so glaringly, black and white in terms of hardcore urban development and the absolute non-existence of anything green. And if we jump back to our passionate conversation about blueberries a minute ago, believe me, we could spend the rest of this interview. Blueberries and ginseng, we could.
I love it.
I'm there, yeah. But getting back also to Neela Patel in Berkeley, she was saying she's watched the blueberry plants get to that point of fruition. And for students, a couple of years after the install of the tiny forest, putting a blueberry in their mouth in what was formerly a parking lot. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
champion of trees, if you're an urban kid, I think is just a little less daunting and a little less abstract than the word arboretum. But
Yeah.
The other thing too about arboretums, and those people who are listening probably already know this, but a collection of trees is not just trees. It's going to have sub levels underneath it. Larger shrubs, smaller trees, layers and layers. And it's really a tree garden.
Yeah.
And when you think about a woodland or an arboretum, I always think that I'm going to see lots of different things, lots of different environments from the ground all the way up to the canopy of the trees, that it's going to be like walking into someone's home and there's all kinds of different furnishings in there. And that's what you're going to see in an arboretum as well, not just the trees. And I think that it's primarily the trees that give the attraction for the place. And that's the other big thing. It's like the big roller coasters.
Yeah. Well, and I know like at Longwood, being very display focused, we love and value our trees for not only for all the benefits that they're providing, but they are extending our display up from the ground. They're providing structure and interest. And that's one of the things too, I think with people sometimes have the tendency that trees and plants can like blend into the background. So they don't always feel like in their neighborhood, that tree is actually a living thing. It's so long lived. It doesn't move. It's standing there. And so, I think taking a step back, appreciating the nature that you have where you are, and also taking care of that nature. If it's a drought, please water your trees. Or any time of year, water your trees, make sure you're mulching appropriately. I go around my community and dig out the volcano mulch. There's so many different ways. Yes, absolutely beautiful gardens here at Longwood, but there's beauty where you are, wherever you are, and just finding it and nurturing it and taking care of it. I think that people need plants and plants need people.
That's exactly right. I really couldn't say it better.
I was going to jump in. I lost track of your timeline with employment. Were you working at Longwood for the Christmas extravaganza when all the lights are up on the trees?
I just started. I started November 27th at Longwood. So I missed all of the install, which I am looking forward to that experience this year, especially with Longwood Reimagining opening up, which will be incredible. 2 new conservatories to enjoy and explore. That's going to be happening in November as well. But yes, Christmas, the holiday season is really incredible here.
So I was there at Christmas with my wife, and just getting back to trees and humanity, it is an extravaganza with all the new LED lighting options. It's actually quite extraordinary. And just to be out there, it was very, it was manageable cold, but it was, of course, completely dark, clear sky. You're aware that people are all around you, but all you can see are these magnificent lit up trees. Once in a while you'd hear an infant cry or maybe some low-level murmuring and stuff like that. But it was hypnotically metaphysical.
Yeah, the tree architecture when it's all lit up is incredible. Yeah. And next time I hope you get a hot chocolate to help stay warm.
Thank you. Yes, good idea.
You explained that really well, because that's exactly the kind of... As soon as you started to explain it, that's exactly how I feel every time I go to the Christmas display. You hear the murmurs here and there and the baby cry. And it's almost like, this is like wonderful, It's all of us animals going into the woods and looking at the lights, I wonder if they have the same reaction when they see them, the deer and the other animals that kind of creep around at nighttime. But it's just an amazing feeling to be amongst trees.
Well, also that you see the outlines of human figures, up in the distance moving along. But there's definitely throngs. I mean, that you get your tickets ahead of time, people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With that description, I think we're coming back to the blueberry description now.
Yes. Kind of got a theme going here. Well, I might as well take the liberty. I am a ginseng guy. And what are some favorite things you would like to share about your research? Because I'll quickly tell a story. Coming back from a conference years ago in Asheville, North Carolina, Western North Carolina. I had to get a really early start to get back to Philly. And I stopped at a little roadside. I was on a 2-lane highway just for coffee and a sandwich. And there was some ginsengers in there, a couple elderly gentlemen and a couple paper sacks right on the counter. And I was too shy to start the conversation at that time of the day. So that's my ginseng story. But tell us about what that project was all about. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, it was a while ago, but I really tried to look at American ginseng from a couple different lenses on how we can make sure we're conserving it. And the reason I wanted to work with ginseng is, again, that cultural connection. The fact that it's this medicinal plant that connects people from around the world. My brother actually, he took me out singing when I was a kid. That's what they call it when you dig up ginseng. Yep. I was in college, but that's a kid to me. But yeah, so it's like this connection with family as well. And, there's a sense of adventure when you're out looking for it. It's just this beautiful package of identity and family and ecological importance. It's the berries are eaten by and dispersed by wood thrush. It's this just beautiful little plant. And so my research was looking at how surface mining and ginseng, how do they relate from a cultural, ecological, and economic perspective? And so from the economic perspective, ginseng it's not going to, of course, make as much money as if you immediately, bulldoze a mountaintop, but there's the opportunity for other flows of income like maple syrup, harvesting other medicinal plants, managing the land holistically can actually bring in a lot of money if it's done appropriately and, with the plan strategically. As far as the cultural component, I was able to partner with this really cool program. It was the Health Science and Technology Academy of West Virginia University. And I worked with these kids who were in this after-school program. And I created surveys that they went out to their community and got people to fill them out. They interviewed harvesters. They went out and interviewed all these different people. And we were able to ask questions like, are you harvesting? Like, how do you harvest? When do you start your harvest season? And, a lot of people were doing it, not necessarily legally, but there were a lot of practices that people do, the harvesters especially, that, if you're planting the seeds after you take a root, if you're taking the right size of root, not taking a plant that's too small, there's a lot of opportunities to actually cultivate and grow that patch. So, working with harvesters and community leaders is another great way to help spread this information in these groups. And then from an ecological perspective, I looked at reintroducing it to sites with 3 different types of land use history. And what I discovered from that study was that it's really site specific. If you have like a bench of a high wall, but it's not super soggy, they're going to do fine, like a developed high wall. The main issue is just knowing the individual sites and monitoring that. Then as far as the other one, I looked at indicator species. So oftentimes people are like, oh, okay, if you see this plant, you're going to see ginseng. And that's not necessary. Ginseng's been so harvested, it's kind of hard to know that. And it does actually lead to my favorite tree. Ginseng does well under tulip poplar trees, so Liliodendron tulipifera. So I know that's going to be one of the questions coming up. So I'll save that. But yeah, it was my advisor at the time was like, this is the broadest Ph.D. I've ever seen. But I think it really lended well to my career of not separating people from the equation.
Yes.
And that's what gardens are. That's what Longwood is. It's that culture. It's that community. It's that beauty. It's that science. It's that making the world a better place. And that's something that I guess is my passion throughout life, is what I see that.
It's interesting that you're saying it brings people close to, I guess, the harvest, and of course, ginseng is more valued when the root looks like a person.
Thank you for saying that.
I'm not sure that people know that, but I had a student who did a research project also for her senior research project at the university. And she said that the reason why American ginseng was so over-harvested was because it did have the resemblance of the human body. The arms, the legs, the head, the whole person was intact. And the more that it looks like a person, the more valuable the ginseng is.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's that connection between from the medicinal standpoint and the understanding of the plant and not over harvesting it, because that's one of the things that got us into this perilous state to begin with. And having someone like yourself research it really kind of grounds you into understanding it more. And understanding its importance within the community. And I was thinking Cliff Drouet, we had him on, Cliff Drouet, who works on strip mines and rehabilitates them.
Wonderful.
And he plants thousands of trees with his groups. And that kind of reforestation would be a wonderful place to plant your new ginseng.
There's so much great work that's being done out there.
Yes, there is.
Chandler, Burkhart, McGraw, like there's a ton of ginseng work that's been done. I highly recommend diving into it. It is a fascinating plant. And, it's called manroot. It can be called that. And, it goes along with the idea of the doctrine of signatures, that if it looks like what's bothering you, then that's what it's good for. So when it looks like a little body, it's good for the whole body. And that's when the value really comes, which you're not going to get that if it's a super young plant, and you can get a lot of money for a ginseng root that looks like a little person. So, it's one of those things that there's, of course, always going to be a few bad apples that cause a lot of damage. But I think most people want to do the right thing, and they try to do the right thing. And we just need to make sure that they have the information that they need, the science that they need to make those choices. So that's, that's why I love Plant People, is that we're doing that work.
There's actually a great graphic novel. I don't know if you stumbled across it, called Ginseng Roots.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the graphic novelist Craig Thompson did it. And it's actually, I think, 5 little booklets. He grew up in Wisconsin, and his summer job was working on a ginseng farm for a Korean family.
Oh, how neat.
So he really, you learn everything about ginseng along with him growing up and learning about comic books, but pretty cool.
That's cool.
That's
cool.
Yeah.
Well, then I'll have to do a shout out here to Harding's Ginseng Farm in Maryland, because he was very wonderful and donated a lot of roots for my research, or gave me a discounted rate. So
wow.
I just wanted to, it's been years.
I'm sure you could do that. That's fine. We're happy to share that information. And I think that it's important to know, and you've already said that the connection between the trees and the plants below. A lot of people think, oh, the tree's fine all by itself, but trees love other plants. They have an interrelationship with them. It's like, you going to the community store and you meet all these different people, and the butcher's there and the dairy person's there. And that's what plants are like. They need all these different other plants to help have a more vigorous and healthy life. And a lot of us don't think of it that way.
Yeah.
It's the community of plants that makes a healthy environment.
It's such a parallel to human communities as well. Like, I'm always just like, diversity is good. It's so good for everything.
That's exactly right. And if we were to take a look at our plant communities and look at how diverse they are, and how the range of sizes and shapes and forms that are created within those communities, it's almost like a puzzle, how things all kind of fit together.
Yeah.
We don't think about that and looking at ourselves, that we're a puzzle piece that fits into a larger community, and each one of us has a function within that community. And if we thought of things that way and systems that way, I think we'd be much happier and less individual.
Yeah, that system, I appreciate that, having that systems level approach. I think that's a beautiful framework to use.
Wow, there's so much to talk about.
Well, let's ask Jessica, any talking points you'd like to make before we kind of wrap it up? Did we ask all the big questions and maybe a few minor ones?
This has been such a fun conversation. I will say, if somebody wants to learn more about some of the things that I've spoken about today, of course, there's absolutely the citations that I mentioned earlier, particularly Westwood in 2020. Botanical gardens are the solution to the plant extinction crisis. That's a great publication. But there's a lot of resources, a lot of networks, the Botanic Garden Conservation International, American Public Gardens Association. There's a great online course that I actually helped at the Morton Arboretum to create, Rooted in Science, The Health Benefits of Trees. And it's an online course that's an option. There's a book that you can get, Rooted Resilience, a meditation guide. The author of that is wonderful. It's my mom.
We're into meditation.
Yeah, I need to make that plug. And back to the very first question, when you're talking about careers, another project I was able to be involved with is Planted, Finding Your Roots in STEM Careers. It's a 3-season-long podcast from the Morton Arboretum about all the different opportunities you can have working with plants, and that it's a viable, fulfilling, exciting, growth-minded, pun intended, career trajectory and opportunity. And then, the last one, just spend time outside and in nature. Visit Longwood Gardens. We grow plants in extraordinary ways. It is incredible and amazing. And, that's what we are here for, is to bring joy and inspiration to everyone through the beauty of nature, conservation, and learning.
Well, so now we have to ask our favorite question. What is your favorite tree right now? We have to say right now because
yes,
it changes. We know.
I know. Oh, it's always such a hard question. But, I think my answer is, it's been pretty consistent. The tulip poplar, Liliodendron tulipifera. I mean, I've moved around a lot in my life, not terribly far, but Ohio, Illinois, Maryland, Pennsylvania. And that's just been, a very constant eastern tree for me. It's, important for the ecosystem. It's the host plant for the eastern tiger swallowtail butterfly. It's beautiful. The flowers are incredible. The leaves are such a fun shape, and how yellow they turn. Yellow is one of my favorite colors. They're so tall. It's awe-inspiring just being in their presence. And then there's the value that they provide to humans, aside from being usually good habitat if it's in the woods for ginseng, timber, honey. They're just an incredible tree that every time I see one, I feel lucky I get to see it or hug it.
That's a beautiful tribute.
When I was doing my research for my thesis in English, I had a professor. He was from India. And he said, one of the things that always grounds people into their new location is to learn a tree.
I love that.
Once you learn a tree, you're home.
Oh, man.
How better does that get?
Over. You can't top that.
You can't. And that's what I was thinking when you were saying, because you moved to all those different places. When he moved from India to England, and then from England to the US, there was a tree, and I'm not sure which one it was, but there were plants that reminded him of home. And that was what grounded him. And he said, and the other one is a bird.
Oh.
If you don't see a familiar bird, learn a bird.
Yes.
And that bird will also ground you to your new home. I thought, oh my gosh.
I love that.
He was great. He was a great teacher. So we were really thrilled that you could be on today and share your knowledge and wisdom with all the work that you've done and the work that you're going to be doing, and how many lives you're going to be changing by being the scientist at Longwood as a communicator of all things science. It was a great privilege to have you on.
Oh my gosh, the privilege is all mine. Thank you so much for this. Was such a fun conversation.
Truly was. Thanks so much, Jessica.
Take care. The Planet Trillion Trees podcast is edited by Andromedan Recordings in Hollywood, California.